Good afternoon, everybody. This is Muchaneta here. I'm in the KEYHOUSE at Munich Fabric Start, and I was just on the stage with these ladies here, and we were talking about fashion activism, talking about sustainability and the role that it plays within the industry. So on the sofa, we've got Theresa Austin here, and we've got Marta Waydel, and we've got, Styliani? I said it correctly, Styliani, who've joined us like an after session of talking about sustainability and continuing that conversation. So we're going to first start with what sustainability means to these ladies. So I'm going to start first with you, Styliani.
Of course. So sustainability, the usual theory is like, this people, planet, profit model, right? But in the holistic model, according to this theory, is addressing everything when you are creating a product or service. Of course, materials, energy, of course, that you are consuming, and definitely what are the people that are, making this garment. Are they having good working conditions? Are they getting paid, the living wage or even more, etc., etc. So I think for me, these are all very important. But of course, consumer is important on his own right, because the products are made for him, so they have to be the right products. They have to be empowering in a way. So this is also part of sustainability.
So I'm not going to repeat that. That was very nice. So for me, circular business models, taking care that everyone within the supply chain is treated well. And also, our behavior, consumer behavior, what we can do within clothes, how we can treat better. I'm very excited about all the innovation, technology innovation that can facilitate more sustainable fashion consumption. And yes.
So for me, I think I split it into two categories. The first being sustainable, which relates more to the production and consumption of products. And the second being ethical, which is the human aspect of that, how humans are treated through that process. And in terms of sustainability, it's impact for me. It's really saying, what impact did this process or this garment or this piece of furniture create across the world? Was it positive? Was it negative? Is it going to help us to be here in 200, 500 years' time? And I think, that might all sound very simplistic, but it's a way of understanding the subject more easily. And I think that's important because it can be so complex and can be so frightening to customers. So really just thinking about the impact behind that production and that creation.
What I'm going to do, I'm going to bring some of the points that the ladies made on stage today. They made some really good points, and I want to kind of have them elaborate a bit further about the points that they were making. And I'm going to start with you, Styliani. You talked a lot about how consumers can make an impact and through clothes swapping. Can you kind of elaborate a little bit about how they can go about doing this and whether it's a model that actually works?
I really believe in clothes swapping, and I think this is something very old. I come from a big family. We are 5 kids, and we were always swapping clothes between us. And this was not even something, we were not thinking about it. We were just doing it out of fun, and it was okay. And now Fashion Revolution, exactly this year, has come up with the idea to launch this clothes swapping, model everywhere in the world, and to create, to collaborate with fashion exchange and do really organized and really cool events to show that this is cool actually. Like what we say, one person's trust is another person's treasures, right? So this is something that everybody can do. They can just invite 5 friends and have some wine and then swap clothes, or they can do it on a bigger scale. I mean, they can invite all the neighborhood, and everybody can organize a swapping event. I think this is really the easiest thing, and everybody will be happy, and then it's totally free. So I think that's why I'm always very excited, and that's why I'm saying everything I'm wearing today, it comes from a swapping thing, from a swapping event.
Marta, you talked about being excited about new materials. Could you share with us what materials have been exciting you so far?
Well, just one sentence to this. I just have one older brother, and I hate swapping clothes with him. It's like that when I had to wear something after, I was like, always very miserable. Well, so there's so many new materials, because when I'm researching consumer behavior, there are some which behaviors that some consumer which only want wear once, and then what we're gonna do? It's like instead they can just wear, for example, paper clothes, that they can recycle just after. I went to Imperial College. There were some startups talking about farming industry that they discover folly, which animal can eat. And I straight away thought about, what about having a dress which I can eat and snack after the party, and it's like this. There is a very exciting company called the Pangaya. They've done a warm jacket, which is filled with flowers. So instead of down, you can feel warm and covered with flowers. So that's very exciting. And there's a lot of new, recycled materials that you can have. You can go around and check them out here as well. So I'm very curious and very excited to go after this to check them out as well. What's new in the market?
And moving on to you, Theresa, you come from a luxury field. What would you say the luxury industry is doing to become more sustainable?
I think there's many different areas that luxury businesses can and do work across. We were actually just speaking between the panel stage and here, and I was talking about how many businesses are vertically integrated in luxury. So even if they are still working with fur or exotic skins, these are supply chains that they've invested a credible amount of time and energy to over the years, and they've been auditing them and working with these suppliers continuously for up to 20 or 30 years with the same suppliers over and over again. So they work on many different angles. One is deep into the supply chain, the care of animals, right, the way through, to how that product is delivered to your door if you buy an order online and the packaging that you use. So I think, luxury businesses tend to be vertically integrated. That gives them the power to work across all the different aspects. I think it's almost a more interesting question to ask about high street chains or fast fashion businesses, because that's where the changes have to be more dramatic, because their margins have been based on efficiencies which are not necessarily sustainable or ethical in origin. So I think for me, the challenge is almost bigger in non-luxury businesses.
When it comes to sustainability, we all know that everyone's pretty much aware of it now. There's nobody who can say that they've not heard something about a brand doing this, or, a company doing that, or a startup that's come up with this amazing material. I'm going to take it to manufacturing. This is where I think the problem lies. It's great having a new material that's sustainable, but how are we going to manufacture it? Do you foresee a future where the manufacturing industry is going to kind of catch up with the rest of the industry in the sense of how they're taking sustainability seriously? Because it's all money as well. I mean, how are they going to change their ways if they've got the money? I mean, do you think manufacturing has a really key role to play in this?
Let me say something. So you made me think of in this master's that I will finish soon. I have a colleague from Bangladesh, and he was involved in this manufacturing, of clothes. And he always emphasizes that it's actually the brands that are putting pressure, and that it's actually because of the brands that manufacturers are recreating, let's say, bad working conditions, and they have to lower the margins all the time. So it seems to me that this is not clear, because then if you go to the brands, they will say, no, we don't know, there's no transparency, we have no clue that the conditions are not good because of many middlemen in between. But, I think this is just a kind of, game. Each one is blaming the other, or, I'm not sure, but it makes sense to me that the brands have to really guide this, with a steady hand, and they have to take some responsibility, and maybe they have to invest in a way to the manufacturing part, because they need the manufacturing part. They are selling the clothes and they need them.
But, manufacturers have minimum orders, so how can we be sustainable if you have to order at least 10,000 of one thing? Would you like to add to that, Theresa?
You putting my hand up like I'm in class. I think there's 2 points to it. One is, this is true of any form of innovation. The more it's adopted, the more it scales. We see those economies of scale. So as consumer pressure mounts, as brand desire to change increases, as manufacturing capability increases, we see the costs level out and it becomes more and more feasible to do it at a reasonable price. But the second point to that is, do we really need to produce minimum runs to such scale anymore? Again, we were speaking about it a little bit earlier. It's a case of, buy well, maybe buy less, maybe wear it longer, maybe care for it longer. And I think this is where you start from the customer side to see changes in consumption habits right the way through into brands. There's a reason why manufacturers have such large minimum runs, and it's because there's been demand for such scale. They have to operate at that level of cost efficiency. So, I think if we see less fast fashion demand coming through, we'll see smaller runs, and it's all part of this life cycle of change.
Can I add to this question, just ask another question actually, because I can see a lot of personalization, customization, and I'm a big advocate of production on demand, which means even lower. And so how would you see that? So how would manufacturers react into this? Because it also bring the manufacturer closer to the customer, localization.
I think it's something that's really exciting for both customers and manufacturers, but very challenging for brands and designers, which sit in the middle and are traditionally responsible for the final form of the garment. I think we see this in two ways at the moment. The first is actual personalization, so engraving and monograms and so on. And that's done at the last stage before the garment or leather good is given to the customer. So it's often done at the point of shipping in the distribution warehouse, or in fact inside of the store once the customers purchase the item. When we look at manufacturing on demand and maybe deeper personalization in manufacturing, I think a lot of this relies on good data and the ability to forecast demand more accurately. And that goes, right through your supply chain, right through your forecasting, and means that you have to have a very data-orientated business with a very powerful and effective set of technology living around that data. I think this is something that you see more, again, in high street businesses where they have a lot of technology infrastructure and they make data-driven decisions already. And you see a little bit less of this in sort of smaller volume and higher price point businesses. But I think it's a great way to see us making less and making things more intelligently.
But for manufacturer, that's not going to be good, right?
Well, I think it depends on, again, we spoke about this earlier. It depends on the economy that's in front of us, and it depends on the state of the world that's in front of us. And that's a really big macro level question. But, we're talking about dropping population levels, changes in political structure. All of this is related to our consumer habits. And if the world is changing and our habits are changing, well, everything's going to have to change. It's sort of inevitable.
Yeah, talking about change, I was going to bring that up. We actually asked for questions while we were on stage, but the German audience is rather shy. But one did actually throw a question at me once we were off the stage, and she was talking about the business model. And fortunately, we had no time on stage for me to bring this one up, but it's something that I always think about. Do you think it's possible for the fashion industry to change their business model to make it more circular? Or is this wishful thinking?
It's 100% possible, and it's happening already. I'm sure you've read a lot about the rise of rental economy, and we see huge businesses of scale in Rent the Runway. We see resale and Vestiaire Collective. There's so many new models based around circular economy, which customers are adopting and actually loving. So, that's one element around... I guess it's still fairly traditional in that you are product orientated. What is also kind of interesting is, you mentioned manufacturing on demand, and that's a different business model. We look at marketplaces, which are sourced by small providers. That's a different business model. So yeah, I think it is happening already. Yeah.
So there is a lot of renting, big players trying new business models now. Also, the subscriptions models with the big brands, and also with the help of digital labels, Internet of Clothes, businesses are also looking about the second-hand market, how they can recover the garments and try to resell it again. So that's the new consumer base as well. So I think it's happening, and there's a lot of market research in the field and a lot of testing going on already. So, and I think it will, start, especially like you mentioned, Rent the Runway, collaboration with, was it Hilton Hotels? So that's amazing. You're traveling for holidays, you're going to some gala, let's say, and then you have a dress. You don't need to buy it, you just rent it, give it you the travel light. So it's like amazing. Great idea.
I actually love all these examples, and I was a big fan until I read an article saying that it's not properly researched and that the CO2 emissions from, renting all the time and sending back, and also the cleaning might not be as sustainable, but I wanted to bring a different dimension. It's always up to the designer, actually, to also make something circular. So there's this modular way of designing that can be adopted more and more, and modularity exists, for instance, in many other industries. I mean, in the automotive industry, exactly, and so many other products, product design. And you can create a garment with multiple lives, You can stitch it in a certain way so that it can be like a pair of trousers in the beginning, and then it can become, a bag, or it can become a pillow or whatever, and have this thought through. And I think this is another way to be circular that requires more research initially, but it's much more rewarding, in my opinion.
That's kind of good to hear so many examples, because sometimes when you hear that kind of circular model, we need to change up his model and so forth, it's kind of daunting, I think, for big brands, And I see a lot more startups, implementing that. And it's not an afterthought, it's something that's part of the whole entire business. So I think you are right, Theresa. I think it's something that's going to happen, definitely. But before we end this interview, I want to get an opinion, because the three of you, it's your first time at the Key House. And I would love to hear your kind of initial reaction to kind of being part of this.
It's really such a nice atmosphere, such a vibrant atmosphere, and very multicultural. I find people from Greece as well. There's this green cotton initiative from Greece that I was very happy to meet here, and not in Greece, for instance, ever. And I think you're having this, this space that is kind of a safe space for conversation and to have, kind of experimenting with saying different things that probably you are not allowed to say somewhere else, in a way.
Actually, I've been here. I have on the previous edition, I think it was September, yes. But I've been very briefly, just for a couple hours. And I really like this, what's happening here. The subjects are very interesting. They are very futuristic. There are some brands who started working 10 years ago on the subjects, and then they can see that the industry is just taking off now. I can't wait to see what's happening in other buildings as well, because there is a sustainability. It was last season a huge word. And I would think there will be even more this year. So, yeah, it's an amazing place. It's really great to be here again, and thank you for the invitation.
I think, as you said, it's really quite a friendly atmosphere, and I'm super impressed by the number of exhibitors who are addressing sustainable topics. I mean, to have a whole central focus like KEYHOUSE on the topic, it's incredible. I know there's a lot more to see on the topic under the Blue Zone also. And I feel like it's a great opportunity to learn about the practicalities of being more sustainable and ethical in your supply chain. There's so much information on offer. I feel a little overwhelmed, but very excited. And I'm going to spend the rest of the day exploring it all. So thank you for inviting us.
I want to say thank you to the ladies for gracing us with your presence in the Key House and for being part of the Fashionate panel. I really appreciate you taking time out of your rather busy schedules to come and be with us here. Thank you, everybody.